little fox.
The Light Princess. Chapter 3. What a nice day.
Why doesn't the princess have gravity?
The king paced back and forth.
My queen, this child can't be ours. Someone took our baby and gave us this light one instead.
Don't be silly, dear, the queen said. I think something else caused this problem.
What do you mean?
The king asked. We didn't watch Ellen carefully at the baptism, and... The queen cleared her throat. Someone who was not invited got too close to her.
Aha!
The king slapped his forehead.
I get it. My sister put a spell on her.
Exactly, the queen said sadly. Everyone did their best to watch the baby princess, but accidents kept happening. For example, one fine summer day, Nanny put her to sleep. She covered the princess with a blanket to hold her down. Later, the queen entered the room. She didn't see the sleeping baby. What a nice day, the queen said. I'll let in some fresh air. She opened a window and then hurried off. She didn't realize a magical fairy wind was blowing outside. It swirled around the window, waiting to do some mischief. As soon as the queen left, the fairy wind rushed in. It danced over to the bed and swept up Ellen. Then it blew back outside. The small baby floated on the breeze like a tiny flower seed. When Nanny returned, the baby was gone. Nanny tried to stay calm.
The queen probably took her,
she thought. She ran to the queen's room.
Your Majesty, do you have Princess Ellen?
No. The queen went pale. Is she missing?
I'm afraid so,
Nanny said. The queen yelled for help.
Help! Help!
A moment later, the palace was as busy as a beehive. Everyone buzzed about, searching for the missing baby.
Princess Ellen!
Finally, a shout rang out.
I found her!
A servant cried. Everyone ran out to the garden. The baby lay under a rose bush, sound asleep. A thick blanket of rose petals covered her. The king and queen sobbed with relief.
Oh! Ellen, no!
The noise woke up Ellen, who laughed and laughed. She kicked her tiny feet, spraying rose petals everywhere. The Light Princess. Chapter 4. Mend Your Ways. After the fairy wind's mischief, Ellen was never left alone. Everyone held her tightly so she couldn't float away. She was tied to her bed and carriage. She was carried everywhere. Her poor parents couldn't stop worrying. One day, the king was counting his money.
My gold coins have weight,
He thought sadly.
yet my daughter weighs nothing at all.
A moment later, the king heard someone crying. It was the queen. The king hurried to her.
What's wrong, my queen?
It's our child, the queen said. Ellen is so light. What if we lose her again? She blew her nose.
It's a big worry.
The king said glumly.
And what will happen when Ellen gets married and has children? Our kingdom will be filled with floating babies.
I have an idea, the queen said slowly. The king smiled.
You always have good ideas, my queen. What is this one?
You could visit your sister, she said. The king coughed nervously.
Visit Lady Agnes?
Yes, tell her we're sorry. We didn't mean to forget her invitation, the queen said. And then you must beg her to remove the spell. Please, dear. The king sighed and patted his wife's shoulder.
Dry your tears. I'll go tomorrow.
The next morning, the king went to visit Lady Agnes. A servant brought tea. The king fumbled with his napkin.
I hope you're well, Agnes. I came to talk to you about something important.
Agnes narrowed her eyes.
Yes?
It's the spell,
the king said.
You were angry I forgot to invite you to the baptism. So you put a spell on Ellen. And now the princess is...
A spell?
Agnes laughed loudly.
How ridiculous! As usual, you're much too impatient, brother. Your silly daughter will grow out of her lightness someday. You just need to be patient and mend your ways.
Mend my ways?
The king said.
What do you mean?
Work on being a better person.
Agnes sneered.
I'll tell you where to start. Treat your older sister with more respect.
The Light Princess, Chapter 5. Hee hee! Time passed and Ellen grew up. She got used to keeping rocks in her pockets. This kept her from floating away. And her parents began to enjoy having a light princess. With Ellen, the palace always rang with laughter. Life was always fun. By the time Ellen was 17, her parents were uneasy again. Yes, Ellen delighted everyone with her laughter, but she laughed at everything, even things that were not funny. For instance, whenever the queen cried, Ellen giggled.
Mama, you're squeezing water out of your cheeks again.
Whenever the king yelled, Ellen floated around him like a butterfly, grinning.
Make that mean face again, Papa. You look silly.
Then one day, something awkward happened. Ellen was crossing the lawn with two servants. They held her hands tightly. But when Ellen saw her father, she yanked one hand away.
Papa!
Ellen looked for rocks to put in her pockets, but all she saw was a big black toad. She grabbed it and started running. She held out her arms, ready to kiss her father. Suddenly there was a puff of wind. The princess flew in another direction, into a young page's arms. Smack! The princess planted a kiss on one of the page's cheeks. On the other cheek, she slapped him with the huge black toad. The princess giggled.
I hope you like toads.
The king turned red as she shrieked with laughter.
This is so embarrassing!
he thought.
Something must be done!
The next morning, the king and queen sent for the princess. She had only a few small stones in her pockets, so it took her a while to sit down. The king cleared his throat.
Ellen, you know you're different from everyone.
No, I'm not.
Ellen laughed.
I have a nose, 2 eyes, and a mouth like everyone else.
Be serious, her mother said.
No, thank you. I like being silly.
Ellen laughed and laughed. The king looked at his wife.
Now what?
There's only one thing to do, she said. We must send for Cop and Hum, the kingdom's wisest philosophers.
Little Fox.